Memories is an anthology anime film released in 1995, spearheaded by the legendary Katsuhiro Otomo. How legendary is this guy? Oh, well, he's just the guy responsible for the manga Akira and its anime film adaptation, which has gone on to be one of the most celebrated films in all of anime history, and for good reason. Not only did he write and illustrate the manga, which is also awesome, by the way, you should definitely check that out if you've never read it, but he also directed the movie, which basically makes him one of the most badass guys to ever live. I mean, just look at this guy. He has made a name for himself in a variety of ways, including anime films, but Memories is a very different entity than Akira. I watched this film for the first time recently without knowing what to expect, or without even being aware that it was an anthology film. All I knew is that Otomo had involvement in it, and that's really all the incentive I needed. But what I got was something completely unexpected. Memories is almost 2 hours of a film, but it's comprised of 3 different short films. And anthology movies sometimes have a core theme running through them, but other times it's just a chance for different writers and directors to showcase their skills and have it all be presented together like a big event. A lot of times anthologies are done with horror, sci-fi movies, or something that has a fantasy element added into it, and I wouldn't directly call Memories a sci-fi film other than the first short that's in it, but it's definitely adjacent to the genre. Maybe this was intentional and maybe not, but it actually kind of reminded me a lot of The Twilight Zone. For anybody that's too young to remember, The Twilight Zone is a TV series from the late 50s and into the 60s in America, which was episodic in nature, always starring different characters and having different plot lines. And each episode would have some kind of strange sci-fi or horror twist to it, and it was always directed by different people, ranging in a variety with its tone. Some episodes were really dark, for the time anyway. Some were really heavy on the sci-fi, some were really heavy on people having psychological breakdowns, and some were even kind of comedies. Others were just full-on science fiction, taking place in space or on other planets or having alien characters. There was a lot of alien episodes. And of course, there was the Twilight Zone movie that was in fact an anthology, and it featured recreations of particular episodes with big-name directors like Steven Spielberg and George Miller. And I only bring up that comparison because Memories also has some heavy hitters in the anime world all coming together to direct and work on different segments. Although Otomo was behind the original story ideas, Satoshi Kon actually wrote the script for the first segment, and this is the guy who made Perfect Blue, Paprika, and the Paranoia Agent TV series, which is one of my all-time favorites. All extremely psychological and strange stories that will certainly leave an impact on you afterwards, not easily forgettable. The first segment was then directed by Koji Morimoto, who also worked on Akira and some other things like The Animatrix. The second segment is directed by Tensei Okamura, who's worked on storyboards for things like Neon Genesis Evangelion, Cowboy Bebop, and Full Metal Panic. And finally, the last segment, and the strangest one by far, is directed by Otomo himself. With a movie like this that excels in slowly uncovering what is going on in the storylines and trying to understand it, it's going to be a little bit hard to avoid spoilers in the review. I'm going to do my best, but it's also one of those things where you kind of have to explain it to even be able to talk about it. And it's a movie that's best to go into completely blind. So in a perfect world, I would recommend that you just go watch it first and then come back to this video. But if you're curious about it and just want to get the gist of what's going on in these stories, I'm going to give you my take and my interpretations. Now, the first story is definitely the most science fiction of the bunch and my personal favorite of the film. It's called Magnetic Rose, and it's about a team of salvagers in space in the not-too-distant future, kind of reminding me of the original Alien, which I'm sure was partly an inspiration. Not the least of which is that the team gets a distress call in the beginning of the film and decide to go check it out. They don't find any alien creatures, but they do find a mysterious space station, and 2 of the members decide to go in and check it out as it slowly unravels into an existential nightmare for them. Inside are luxurious rooms, dinner tables, long hallways, and holograms of different events and memories of a person who used to be here, and many pictures and paintings representing a young opera singer who was once at the height of her career. Both the characters handled the situation well at first, with the older member of the team, Heinz, being a little more cautious and aware of his surroundings than the younger member, but something is very off about this place, minus just the lack of any living people. Soon, as they explore, they begin to see visions of people and events of the past, definitely making it feel like a haunted spaceship. But it's when they get separated that things get really strange. There's a really tragic story that's only briefly laid out to us with Heinz, and as the visions become more real, he starts to see images of his own daughter, and the way this is done is very brilliant because it makes the viewer aware that something happened with his daughter that was a tragedy, but it's very subtle at first. It shows shots of a little girl doll falling off a table or flashes of a girl on the ceiling, and the visions or memories become so realistic that they begin to take over reality. The daughter loves the fact that her dad was an astronaut and can go up into space, and also continuously mentions the roof of their house and how something up there needs to be fixed. And we understand that this ship is preying on its victims' memories in order to feed them a false reality in order to trap them here forever. In fact, everything about the ship is fake. It's all an illusion, with the holograms, its appearance, the food, and everything else, and it seems to be all an elaborate trap to lure in new people and keep them there forever. It also makes us question who is responsible, which, if there was anything about this short film that I would change, I would like it to be a little bit more ambiguous about this. See, the ship is a recreation of many things that were important to a long-deceased opera singer, a woman who was once at the top of the world, and then her fiancé mysteriously died. She traps the younger member of the crew in the ship, basically having him take on the role of the fiancé, but ultimately it's discovered that this is the ship's own AI that is keeping the memory and life of this singer going on indefinitely. Heinz gets the opportunity to live here forever until his own death, within the false reality with his daughter still being alive. Seeing this man having to relive the most tragic moment of his life and then having a chance to live in a world where it never happened, it takes some serious balls to turn that down and to accept a darker reality rather than to live in a happy false one. But either way, his death may be on the horizon because outside of the ship, a mass destruction begins, and we end with a potentially bleak ending of Heinz making it out, but now drifting through space. And perhaps this film is about dying on one's own terms or dying with the acceptance of reality rather than living within fabrications. He had to come to terms with his daughter's own death, even if that means nothing but darkness within his future. Maybe relating that to the darkness of space, but also having that complete acceptance of it. But then we get one of the wildest tonal shifts that I've ever experienced in a film. From deep, dark, existential horrors in space about coming to terms with tragedies of the past to the second story, which is about a guy with really stinky farts. And I'm only like half joking here. The second film is called Stink Bomb, and it is about a guy who accidentally takes an experimental medication for his cold that were actually pills that were being used for biological warfare. As a result, his body starts to emit a super strong odor that smells so bad that it kills people. So it's basically like a night after Taco Bell. I don't really know how to explain this one. It is so ridiculous, but also does get kind of dark. See, the main character Nobu has pretty much no idea what's going on at first because he is unaffected by the smell. So he basically wakes up and finds all of his coworkers dead, and then the entire town starts to drop dead in front of him. Like, imagine you're just walking around town and everybody around you is dying on the street and you have no idea why. So there's a definite dark humor vibe that's going on with this one, with the main character being an absolute dork and having no idea. But what makes this segment so good is the scale that it gets up to, because it starts to involve the military and special defense forces, and there's a big table room discussion scene about what's going on and how to stop it, and like nothing works. Gas masks don't work, they don't protect you, no one can get close to them, and every time Nobu's there, there's just this giant animated stinky fart cloud that follows him everywhere. Once they figure out that he's the cause, they even try to assassinate him, but they can't get close to him because the smell gets inside people's suits, and there's literally no way to escape. Yeah, it's absolutely ridiculous. I think there's probably a commentary here that's more rooted in Japanese culture than I have the awareness to comment on. Like Nobu being this genuinely nice guy who is only doing what others tell him to do. That kind of overly worked but consistently polite archetype that you see in Japanese media, or the Japanese authorities who want to keep the situation contained and solve it themselves but ultimately have to rely on help from the Americans. There's probably a lot of commentary in there that I don't fully understand, but I kind of get it. But I actually do really like this segment, but its placement right after the extremely serious Magnetic Rose one is just very jarring. But I also could not imagine this opening or ending the film, so ultimately I guess it is in the right spot being second. The final segment is called Cannon Fodder, and this is the strangest one, because here we are completely thrown into a fantasy world. Despite there being themes relating to the real world, with the animation and character designs, we are deliberately in an exaggerated environment, and it's meant to put us in a completely different perspective. We are shown a world, or a city rather, that's entire life revolves around war, preparing for war, building weapons for war, shooting cannons off for war. It's a city that makes and builds bombs and weapons that are designed specifically for that purpose, and everybody has a job to do in order to keep it functioning. And with it, it creates this style that is meant to mimic one continuous shot, basically saying that everybody needs to work together in order to keep this functioning for this harmonious way of life for the good of their society. And while watching this segment, I remember thinking, when is the story gonna start? They begin with a young boy excited about war and his dad going into work, and then it just follows him and the kid, and we see everyone building and creating cannons and bombs, and it just keeps on going and going. And at first I was confused and a little off-put, but in a way I think that's the point. It's a world that's at war with an unseen enemy, and every aspect of daily life revolves around that war and the propaganda convincing everybody to fight for their cause. So it's kind of like a commentary on society being bought into the illusion of their own superiority and the ideals of their leaders, giving up individuality for people to only be one piece in a larger machine that has its own agenda and doesn't really care about you as a person individually other than what you can provide to keep everything functioning and keep everything going. And with the whimsical child character, it shows the indoctrination of getting kids invested within their efforts. The kid in the short is happy and excited about everything war, and he looks up to their leader as a hero and idolizes him as somebody that he would want to become. So as far as the artistic look at things and its commentary on war and society, I think it's pretty good, but its lack of a story and narrative kind of makes it stand out in the film because it feels more like something that should be watched on its own rather than part of a larger ensemble. Now, that's not to say that I disliked it. I did like it, but it is my least favorite of the three for that reason. Overall, though, Memories is a great experience and definitely something that I wish I had seen earlier. Anthology films are kind of an acquired taste and at times aren't going to satisfy, especially when some segments are weaker than others. But this one feels more like a celebration of anime and different artist visions all coming together. Otomo led the charge, but he allowed everybody to stretch their creative wings and gave each director an opportunity to do something special. Magnetic Rose is by far the best of the bunch, and if stretched out, could probably be its own feature film, but I do think each of the short films here have their own merits, and if you're a fan of animation, particularly the way anime used to look back in the 90s, and with a little bit of that Akira flair, then Memories is definitely one you need to see. So I'm curious if you guys have seen the movie Memories. What do you think about it down below? How do you think it compares to something like Akira? And also, what was your favorite segment of the three? I'd appreciate it if you left any comments or thoughts about it down below. Also, I would be super grateful if you hit the like button and subscribe to the channel to see other anime, manga, movie reviews. I have an entire playlist of them. A lot of the old school stuff that I like to talk about from like the 80s and 90s, early 2000s. That's my vibe. So I have a lot of those videos here. But even just something as simple as a like and a comment would really help me out, and I would appreciate it. So thanks for watching, guys. Let me know what you think, and you can check down below in the description for other ways to support the channel, as well as all the various social media links where you can follow me. Other than that, guys, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. I'll talk to you next time.